Okay, we're going to be talking about the theory of cognitive development and the zone of proximal development. In particular, we're going to start with the theory of cognitive development. So this is a model that explains how a child constructs a mental model of their world or of the world that they're in. It was proposed by Piaget, I believe I said that correct, and it was described as a generic epistemology, which is basically the origins of how a child and growing into a fully functioning adult thinks, or the origins of thinking, if you will. This theory was different than a lot of the other theories because, one, it focused on children rather than all learners. So the development of children in learning process as opposed to everybody from all walks of life in every stage of life. It focused specifically on the developmental meaning, so how as opposed to what they learned, how being the process by which they are able to piece together what they're learning and develop the social norms. I proposed the discrete objective levels of development. So a very, very simplified version of that would be a staircase moving up as opposed to a ramp of learning. There were very measurable objective levels as you moved up. So this theory was made up of schemas, which I like to call predispositions or just general norms that we've established. These are the building blocks of knowledge. It has an adaptation process that basically allows for three terms: equilibrium, assimilation, and accommodation. Now, equilibrium being what situation you're in, you understand based upon the schema or the social norm that you understand already. The assimilation being you're put into a new environment and you use a already developed schema into that environment in order to understand how to react. If for whatever reason the schema works, you move back into equilibrium. If it doesn't, you go into what's called assimilation. Assimilation is the process of basically adapting and maturing the schema, or just getting a whole brand new one that's being developed for that particular situation. It's a very conflicting, and when I say that, I mean giving you conflict in your thinking process to better understand and challenge you to learn. Now, Piaget was a very big proponent of discovery learning, which is the idea that children learn best when they're doing something. They're incorporating the tactile with the visual, with the auditory. They're doing it all in one. So we're going to move over into the stages of cognitive development. As children are doing things, from ages 2 or from birth up to 2, the main achievement is just knowing that something still exists even when it's not seen. This is called the sensory motor. It is basically understanding for the child that when mommy and daddy are not in my line of sight, they still exist. They will return. Or if I put a ball behind something and I can't visually see it, it's still actually there. This moves into the preparational stage, which is ages 2 through 7. And this is being able to think about things symbolically. The example that I like to say is a rain cloud over somebody would make it seem like, oh, they must be sad. If there's a sun over someone, they must be happy. It's symbolically giving meaning to an object in order to create or recreate a feeling or to connect the idea. However, in this stage, it's still very egocentric or self-centered thinking. The child thinks of everything about from their perspective, from their point of view, and from what they understand. This moves into the concrete operational stage, which is ages 7 through 11. This is the beginning of logical or operational thought, and basically that means starting to understand the why of how things fit together and move together. They can understand that number at age 6, mass at age 7, and weight by age 9 don't change. That they are a concept that remains the same as they are transferred and moved through. Even though the appearance of something may change, so if you have a red apple or a green apple, it doesn't matter, it's going to weigh the exact same, for example. And this moves into the formal operational stage, which is ages 11 onward into adulthood. And this is being able to propose a logical reasonable hypothesis that is abstract, that causes them to think and say, well, what if, and use the schemas that they've learned earlier and the process of adaptation, assimilation, and equilibrium into understanding the world around them. Now, this all theory of cognitive development moves into the zone of proximal development, which is defined as the distance between guided learning and discovery learning. Now, discovery learning, as proposed by Piaget, is children being able to do things and discovering themselves. Guided learning is going to lead to what they call scaffolding, which is another term that we use for the zone of proximal development. All of this was proposed by Lev Vygotsky. I think I said his name wrong, however. And so this guided learning can lead to scaffolding, much like with a building where you put the scaffolds on the side in order to brace it up as you repair it, build it, paint it, etc. And an effective scaffolding process is aided in many ways by keeping a learner's attention or interest in a task, and then making the task simple. You want them to understand what they're doing as you guide them through the process of learning about it, interacting with it, etc. Focusing on the aspects that will help with a solution. If there's a problem of why something doesn't work, let's say 3 wheels on a truck are working and the other one isn't, let's look at the other wheels. Let's guide the child into say, this is why it works, this is why it doesn't. Let's figure out what it works or how it works. And as they get frustrated, you control that, because there should be a level of frustration that helps push them to understand and learn to a greater degree, but you don't want them to become overly frustrated and then get anxious or stressed out where they can't learn in a fun environment or a safe environment. And then you do the task to show them. Maybe you clear something out of the wheel axle. Maybe you spin the wheel and realize, oh, it's not connected the right way. You're using your knowledge to show them. So the whole process of you using your knowledge and essentially teaching them through effective scaffolding is known as learning from a more knowledgeable other, aka a teacher. So the teacher's job is to pass the knowledge through social interaction. They're supposed to do the operation with them. Now, this could move into discovery, where you let them kind of discover as far as they go, and then you guide them, and then you let them discover some more, and then you guide them, and you kind of balance it out. But the role is to pass knowledge through your social interaction, and this can be done in 2 really, really good ways. Reciprocal teaching, which is summarizing, questioning. It's basically having checkpoints where the child has to teach back to you or repeat back to you what needs to be done, said, etc. It can also be done through collaborative learning, which is where a more advanced peer or social group member is able to help teach them, or says, oh, I understand this because of this, this, and this. And the higher students are able to, or children are able to pull the children who are slower or further behind up with them. So through the process of reciprocal teaching, collaborative learning, and just overall knowing the difference between guided learning and discovery learning, which is the zone of proximal development, and then using that theory of cognitive development where you realize there are phases and steps that they need to be at and what they need to grow to. It's a great way to teach students and children how to learn, as well as the way that works best for them in learning.